Hello, my name is Vito Quaglia, and this is A Matter of Principle. Today's guest is Joelle Yarmel, the Executive Director of the FM Kirby Center in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Joelle is at the helm of one of NEPA's premier cultural and entertainment venues, so let's find out about what it's like to steer the ship that is the FM Kirby Center. So welcome to the podcast, Joelle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. It's wonderful of you to give some time to talk with us. And, the podcast is about school sports and leadership and basically anything beyond that. So a lot of our guests are either live in Northeast PA or work in Northeast PA or have, ties to this part of the state. And many people are leaders in various, aspects of life. So, you're leading a group of people at a venue in NEPA that's kind of unique. There's not a whole lot of FM Kirby centers around, so you're going to have a very unique story, I think. So before we get into too many specific details, why don't you just take a moment and, have the listeners learn a little bit about your journey, where it started for you and how you wound up where you're at.
Yeah. So I grew up local. I'm local. I grew up in Duryea. I graduated Pittston area high school. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and after graduation, I moved to New York City. I have an aunt that lives there that said, "Hey, come and live with me and see if, what you think of New York." And I was there for about 6 years. I was doing direct marketing in the publishing world, and I just didn't love it. I don't know. And when I was in high school, I did a lot of volunteer work. I was a part of those key clubs and the student council, and I always liked those kind of extracurricular activities at school and giving back to the community. And so I actually met with a career coach in New York, and, they do those tests and you talk with them and tell them what your interests are. And he said, I really think you should give nonprofit management a shot. So I actually moved back to the area, and I started in the nonprofit world at the Helping Hand Society in Hazleton, working with children. And again, was there for about 6 years doing marketing and fundraising. And then this opportunity for a membership manager position at the FM Kirby Center came up, and the rest is history. I've been here 8 years this month and just instantly really fell in love with the entire idea of the nonprofit aspect of it, as far as arts education and giving back to the community and the work that we do for schools, which, hopefully we can touch upon a little bit later, just spreading this arts education throughout the community and the schools, but then also having, some mainstream headliners downstairs on the stage. It was just a really, really cool place to be if nonprofit especially is what you're looking to do. So I just really enjoyed it and fell in love with it pretty quickly. So, just like anyone, you work hard and opportunities just kept for me. And I became director of development here, heading up the fundraising department. And then in 2022, our executive director at the time was retiring. And I had just this awesome opportunity to step into this role. And, you introduced me as steering the ship here. It has been a crazy 2 years so far. We actually had a pretty devastating flood last year that, again, I'm happy to talk about further as we get into it, but it's been a crazy 2 years, but it's really been wonderful. And I work with some really awesome and talented people here who make what we do look so easy. So that's the very long version of how I got to where I am.
Well, actually, it was a pretty quick version. So no, it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't lengthy really at all. I mean, sometimes when you get asked to, talk about yourself, people kind of like, oh, what am I supposed to say? But no, you kind of led us to where you're at. And you talked about, the people that you work with. So,
Yeah.
for someone who doesn't, do what you do, sometimes when you see, articles and you hear, a story about the executive director of this nonprofit or that nonprofit, sometimes there's not really a disconnect, but some people probably think, well, what does that mean? What do they really do? So, you can't be the one who does everything there. So who are what types of people do you have underneath you or with you on your team that, kind of you delegate to, or they're in charge of different aspects of what happens at the Kirby Center? So how large is your team, and, how many different roles are there? Explain that to us a little bit.
Yeah. So Full time, we have 15 different people in all different areas. And then on a show night, you know, there could be, upwards of between 50 and 100 people between, some paid part-time front of house staff members, volunteers that are here helping us, like our ushers, taking people to the seats. We have a union stage, so we'll have all the stage hands involved. But on a day-to-day basis, so, you see all these shows that are being announced. We have a program director who's, his name is AJ Jump. He just knows music inside and out, and he really knows this community and the types of performances that he feels will do well in this market. But it's really a team effort because, he'll get these opportunities and then he'll meet with our director of marketing and our box office director because, we have to be able to market the show and the box office has to be able to sell the tickets. So it's, there's not one person in this building that can do something alone because they need each individual part of the organization to go along with it. We have a tech director that's here that, we got to make sure this show can fit on the stage and that we have the capacity to even put it on. We have an operations department that, is going to be doing all of the tech work, the hospitality, setting up the hotels and setting up all the logistics for everything. And then, my heart and soul, we have our fundraising team that's led by our associate director of development. And so, yeah, there's all these various departments. And then like any organization, you have a finance department, you have an office manager, because with everything that we do, you need to pay the bills, right? You need to have all the finances in line. So everyone they all work so well together. And that is the reason that we're so successful right now. So COVID had actually shut us down for 16 months. And, we were a really small staff during that time. So when I took over in 2022, there was only about 7 or 8 of us on staff. And like I said, now we're up to 15 people. So this past 2 years, we filled like 6 key positions. So, our programmer, our marketer, our head of operations, they're all brand new to the organization. So this past year, like a year ago today until June, was our first real season on stage and in the building as this kind of new team that we introduced to the community. And it was one of the best we've ever seen. It was, we brought in some new performances. We had so many new people walking into the building saying, how have I never been here? How did I not know about this? And what a beautiful facility. And, we have this impeccable maintenance department that just takes such pride in this building. And anytime you were to walk into it, whether it's a show night or otherwise, it's always kept so clean and so beautiful and so shiny. So I think everyone just really enjoys what they're doing and they take such pride in it that they make it look really easy, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of hours. These shows are at night, but we all have a day job. So we're all here doing our administrative work and making deals and talking to people and talking to donors. And then we have a show that's starting at 7, 8 o'clock. Our operations team, sometimes they're not leaving till 12, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm coming back in at 6 and 7 in the morning to do it all over again. And when you don't have a huge staff, it's those same people doing it over and over and over again. So, and they do it with a smile. It's pretty impressive.
And I think, and it sounds, there's a lot of moving parts, and that you must have a lot of really reliable, talented people on the team because, like you said, without a huge staff, you have to really bring people on board that, and they have capacity to do, several things, right? They're wearing many hats. They're not just sitting there just doing, pigeonholed into one little role. You probably have to lean on each other a lot in something like that. And especially like when you said, sometimes you don't think about that. You guys work there during the day. You have a day job, but everything that you do that the public sees is happening after hours, really, if you think about it. So there's a whole lot going on in that place 24/7. Now your connection to the community, right? It's kind of twofold. I mean, you're on the square in downtown Wilkes-Barre. So, you have that downtown feel and, the foot traffic of the people that work there and kind of do some things down there. You have Wilkes and Kings Close, things like that. But you're also really, a regional venue. People probably go to, different events there from all over, drive in, park, things like that. So when you reach out and connect to these areas, whether it's the downtown population or anybody in, NEP and beyond, how how do you communicate? I mean, do you, and we'll talk about your team as well, but like, are you guys, sending things out? Are you on the internet a lot, using social media? Do you have, through your membership, do you just reach out to the members more, and it kind of, pyramids from there? So how do you communicate with everybody that kind of uses the Kirby Center?
Yeah. So again, we hired this director of marketing, Neil Prisco, just last year and a half ago. He came to us from WVIA, had 15 years of experience. So he came to us, seasoned and excited, because he really loves everything within the music world and the arts world. So he kind of, in the interview alone, he impressed me, because it's like he did the typical interview stuff, right? It's like, this is what I can do well, and this is what I could do. And then he looked at me and he's like, what do you think about your website? And I said, well, it's a little antiquated, we could definitely use touch up. And he said, yeah. And he starts throwing all these ideas at me. And so he hit the ground running once he came in here. And that is his biggest goal. And he has definitely achieved it in such a short time, of increasing our social media presence, of making our website not only user friendly, but just visually stunning and exciting and motivating, just encouraging rather. And we have a woman that works in our box office, that she's our box office supervisor. And when we were short staffed, she started helping us out with some social media posts, and she was just so good at it. And so we gave her a dual role, and now working with Neil. And then there's also a marketing associate. They're just getting so much information out there through our social media, on Facebook, on Instagram. We're now doing some TikTok. We have email lists. We have a marketing list that if you go onto our website and you can subscribe to get information from us, that list just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger every day. I mean, there's probably about 50 or 60,000 email addresses on that. So once a week, we send out this newsletter with all news Kirby, what shows were just recently announced. Here are all the shows that are coming up in the next season, how to get more information on tickets. And also, he's just done a really great job of working with our local media. I mean, he's created some great relationships with, the local radio stations and television and newspaper, which we've always had those great relationships. People love the Kirby. And, you talked about our downtown area. A few years ago, we did an economic impact study where we're bringing in $9 million to this local area annually through our shows. So, you figure it's not only people coming in from out of town, staying at hotels, eating in our restaurants, but when there's a big show that's coming here, they have a crew sometimes of 50 to 100 people that are also walking downtown, or, going across the bridge and getting something to eat in Kingston. So we are definitely a gem downtown.
Oh, no doubt. And one of the cool things, like when you walk in there, like I mentioned before we went on air, it's like you're going back in time, because, it's an old building. It's well kept. You do a great job, and just, it's immaculate, but it brings you back to like the classic theaters, back in the old days when you would go, and just the way it's, there's a lot of pride there. You can tell there's pride in how you guys, keep the building looking, and the hospitality there, everybody that you interact with is always so friendly, and it's just it's a great place for anything, whether you're going there to see the Citizens Voice, scholastic thing, or if back in the day, a lifetime ago, when I graduated from Bishop Hoban High School in 1988, we graduated out of the Kirby Center. So that was a neat, community connection there. And it's just, there's so many different things that I think you guys keep adding and evolving to. And with that team, like, I keep going back to your team a little bit, how much do you communicate with them? I mean, is it something now where you don't sit down weekly or monthly at a round table, and you see everybody? Or do you do a lot of things, on Zoom, or, quick little text group? Like, how do you communicate because I'm sure you guys have to be constantly in contact with each other, but you're not going to sit down and have these formal meetings. So how does your team communicate within its own group?
No, we definitely do formal meetings. So I have about 8 direct reports. So I meet one-on-one with them twice a month, every other week. The programmer and I meet every week because, I mean, he can get 6 offers across his desk in an hour, and he can come into my office 6 times a day between both of our schedules. So, he and I try to sit down once a week. Once a week, I get together with our program, marketing, and box office directors and make sure that we're all on the same page, because a lot of times we'll have 2 or 3 shows announcing in one week. And so they all need to be on the same page. And then we do a weekly staff meeting, which is just all of the admin aside from our box office representatives, simply because they need to stand by at the box office. Now, I will say this summer, unlike any other, our stage is dark because it's twofold. We had scheduled to be dark because we are replacing all of the rooftop units on our building for the HVAC system. But in part, we're also renovating and rebuilding the basement from that flood that we had last year. So right now we have no shows happening from June until mid-September. So every week I just keep canceling that weekly staff meeting because we're all very close. No one's working from home. Everybody works in the office. But when the season starts back up, those weekly staff meetings are really important because our operations team will basically give everybody a rundown for the day. A lot of the tours, especially, if they're doing some kind of rehearsal, we might not be allowed through the theater, between 4 and 5 o'clock or something. So that's how we exit the building. So you need different instruction. But yeah, we have to have those meetings because otherwise it's the only way to stay on the same page. And I really feel like last year went so well. And it's actually been part of the culture. So I've been here 8 years. I was under the direction of a couple of other executive directors, and that's been the way that we've always done it. And I think, you don't mess with something that's working well, right?
No, absolutely. And that's whatever works for the organization. Every culture is different. Every group of people are different.
Yeah.
And the key thing is, that consistent communication, regardless of the vehicle that you use. But again, you have so many moving parts that if you're not in constant contact or everybody's on the same page, it could really go sideways quickly. Now, you took over that leadership role, that executive director position a couple of years ago. And in the middle, before you could really, say I'll get on the job there for 2, 3, 4 years and feel good about all the things you're doing, you have the flood. Now, nothing will either tell you you're in the right job or in the wrong job, more than a crisis like that. So, and I'm sure in all the things you did leading up to that, you didn't really take a course on how to be in charge of an organization when a flood hits it. So what was that like? I mean, tell us a little bit about, when it happened and then how you kind of said, okay, like how did you assess what the next steps were and how did you put things into place? So explain going through that kind of natural catastrophe, what it did to your organization.
Oh my goodness. So it happened, very early in the morning on October 10th. And I happened to be in Nashville at a booking conference with our program director. And we were scheduled to come home the next day. And I got the call like 3 a.m. Nashville time. So I actually, once I saw a picture of how bad it was, I immediately changed my flight and came home that day and got home as quickly as I could. I mean, there was 6 feet of water in over 11,000 square feet in our basement. So like that's a 500,000 gallons of water. It was, I mean, everything, to say everything was ruined is just a silly point. I mean, you look at elevators, our dressing rooms that had just been built. We actually just had redone our dressing rooms in 2019. So they were barely used. The lights that are on our stage are controlled by what's called a dimmer rack, which was a $250,000 system. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it was upwards of a $4 million insurance claim. So, I don't realize all of that in the moment as I'm flying home. And, it's one of those things like we had Frankie Valli up that week that was supposed to happen that Friday. And I mean, I'm calling these guys that I work with and I'm like, what do we think? Do we think we can do Frankie Valli on Friday? They're like, the water's not even out of the building, right? They're like, I don't know. And when you walk through it, it was emotional. So I think the timing of it, as far as, I got into the building around 5 or 6 o'clock that evening And that evening just gave me that minute to just realize just how huge this was. And then the next day, it was one of those things you had to survive it, right? So like we had, so, we had a cleanup crew, we had electricians, we had firefighters, like all these people, and looking at me basically saying, "Oh, what do you want us to do?" I have absolutely no idea. I don't know where to start. And then, you just have these wonderful resources of really smart people that do this a little bit more often than we do, saying, well, we could start here, we could start there. And then, I just kind of leaned into that a little bit. And then very quickly, we were able to make some really good, fast decisions. We have a really supportive board of directors. And so with that board of directors is an executive committee. So I quickly got on a Zoom meeting with them and got them up to date on where we were. And, they were just a great resource for me to say, hey, am I forgetting something huge just because I'm not seeing it, and just having them in my corner to say, did you do this? Did you do that? And, there's this man named Brent Berger who is from Quad 3, and he was a chairman here on the board. He's our ex officio. And he was actually one of the first people in the building that day. And he has just been an excellent resource for us, just asking questions. But, it's one of those things where when you're pushed into it and then, you see another gender, for example, men actually, respecting me, knowing that I know nothing about what I'm talking about, and kind of, asking my approval for things and asking for my advice on things. And then all of a sudden my answers are sounding pretty smart, even though I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to this building. And I was like, hey, I'm kind of catching on. And then, my confidence grew a little bit. And it was really just keeping my eyes open, keeping my ears open, and then just really making the best educated guess I could for a lot of it. And it all turned out great. I mean, this team, like I said earlier, we joke around when you said about steering the ship. This team has just been amazing getting through this crisis. They worked extremely long hours. I mean, that first few weeks, we were here late nights, on weekends. It only took us 14 days to get back on stage with a full show, which is,
wow.
If you walked through this, I mean, the flood was on a Tuesday. We didn't have power in the building until the following Tuesday. And then the Tuesday after that was our first full stage show. So it was like one of those things, Vito, like, you don't want to go to the gym and then you go to the gym and you feel really good about yourself. Like that show, we all just stood back and we're like, it was worth every bit of that really hard 2 weeks. But every day after that has been equally as challenging. It's still not put back together. We have contractors down there every day. And so what has happened since then is, okay, so this building was built, 1938? It's been renovated certainly a few times since then, but there are things that if we could have changed them, we would want more offices downstairs, right? We would want the bar that's down there to work better for our members and for our guests. If we could add more bathrooms, man, that would be huge, but we don't have the time. We don't have the resources. Well, here we are. Everything is down to the studs. So we had to make those quick decisions and those quick investments in this building and say, let's rebuild for the next 50 years. And so we were lucky enough to be able to make some of those changes. And this community and, the members that are part of the Kirby Center, I sent them out a letter letting them know the state of what we were in and what was going on. And they supported us financially, it was heartwarming, but it was necessary. And we were just so grateful for their support. So our big opening is in September.
Now,
Fingers crossed.
Who's the show after the big opening? Who's going to be that person that gets to be the one to celebrate everything?
Well, it was Pete Davidson. That show is no longer happening. And so now it's called Canceled Podcast.
Okay.
And I've been wanting to do a podcast on our stage. So I was really excited that AJ was able to work this one out. But interestingly enough, it's almost sold out. The community responded really well to it. Yeah. So we're really excited for that. That's going to be on September 18th.
Well, then that's a goal for me to get the A Matter of Principle podcast to be on the stage at the Kirby someday. That would be something.
All you got to do is give me a call.
There you go. I know some people right now. My people will talk to your people. Yeah. So
exactly.
You have a little, you and your team have some Josh Shapiro in you, like getting stuff done. Yeah. Like I-95 falls apart there, and he and his team, they got that back together because they knew how important that artery was for transportation and whatnot. And you guys, I didn't realize that you guys were back up and running, that put something out there within 2 weeks like that. That's incredible.
Yeah,
the amount of, and like you said, sometimes going through adversity like that is the best teacher, because you have to do something. You're never really going to practice to do that. You never want to anticipate something like that happening, but guess what? It happened, and you got to figure something out, and everyone's looking at you. I could just imagine, when you're saying that, I could see you're standing there and all these guys are looking at you like, all right, boss, what's next? And you kind of just figure it out.
Yeah. And again, like there's no electricity in the building. So we have doors open to let lights in. We all have sweatshirts on. Everything is drenched, and we're up at theater where it's drier, and like hard hats. Like, I mean, this is a construction zone, and they're looking at me like, where do we start? And I was like, oh, but again, it was a real partnership, but there was like a lot of respect involved. It was just, it is probably one of my proudest moments of my career. And that is only because of the people that I was working with. They trusted me and I trusted them. And we were all just a whole area we had just never imagined being in.
No,
it was pretty incredible.
Going through something like that definitely is going to change you. It's going to help develop your whatever leadership skills you had are definitely going to be changed after something like that. So how would you describe the kind of leader you are? What is your leadership style?
So I don't necessarily think I have a quote unquote leadership style. What I've noticed with myself is I tend to be different with each person I work with, depending on what their character is like and what their work ethic is like. So I think if I had to have one, it would just be, it's really based on, it's transparent. I'm always trying to just be honest with them. I talk to them the way I would want to be spoken to. I will always give respect, and I'll always lean into their expertise. Like I said, we have a programmer and a marketer, and they're also really good at what they do, and they've been doing it longer than me. But, I'll always say to them, well, here are my thoughts. What do you think of them? Right. And if they don't think they're right, and unless it needs to be done, okay, then let's go another way. But, a lot of times, we'll meet in the middle and always getting things done. So as long as the team is thriving and moving forward and doing it in a way that makes us all happy, I mean, I'm good, right? I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that. We are pushing the boundaries. Our numbers were better this past year than ever, again, with this crisis that we had on hand. So I think we've all proved that we can get this done. And I tell them all the time, I'm just here to help you get your job done, because you're all really good at what you do. So I just want to be the resource here that keeps us all together and that helps get you forward and helps open these doors for you that, maybe I can help push.
It sounds like, you subscribe to that more of facilitator rather than a top-down manager, in the way you go about stuff. And in the world of education, it would point towards, differentiated instruction, where you try to reach every student where they're at. And, in the land of coaching, it's, knowing which athlete to push and which athlete maybe to, coddle a little bit, things like that. You have to kind of know your personality you're dealing with. So that's kind of what you're using, some of the same things and concepts and strategies that we talk to other, leaders about. And it's just so funny that it seems like everyone we bring on the show, and it doesn't matter if they're in the business community or education, or if they're an elected official, they own their own business, whatever it is, there's so many similarities. And it all comes down to basically the relationships that you have with your team, and the team of people that you're working with. and the way that you kind of like you're more of like a person I used to know back in the old days when I was teaching up in the Poconos. You used to say you want to be the guide on the side, not the sage on the stage. You know, sometimes people think that if you're the quote unquote leader, you have to be out in front all the time and you have to have all these speeches ready to motivate all your people. But it seems like the more successful ones are the ones that are just there doing what's necessary and changing up. It's really comes down to instinct, right? Like you have to know when to be, when you rely on those people and say, hey, what do you think about this? When you read the room and you can tell like that's probably not a good idea. But you kind of, okay,
Exactly.
you know, like you respect each other and you kind of go in that direction. So that's pretty cool. Now,
Yeah.
a question that I have when it comes to what you do, is there like, you know, a secret society of executive directors of places like the Kirby Center where you guys have a little network you talk, or do you know, because I'm sure so many communities have a Kirby Center, you know, the different thing, but something similar. Is there communication between all the people with those similar jobs, or does that not exist?
So yes, and yes. Yes. So you know the arena up in Wilkes-Barre, and they're run by this company called ASM. We have a nice partnership with them, and they facilitate different meetings with general managers of organizations like this. The unique part for me is that the majority of them are programmers. They're bookers,
Mm-hmm.
where I am a fundraiser. And as a nonprofit, you know, it certainly makes sense for our organization to have someone like me in this capacity. But there are not a lot of me's elsewhere.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, you know, those meetings where typically I would sit in makes a little bit more sense for our booker to sit in, because they're mainly talking programming. They're not really talking a ton of operations and of overall market and marketing and things like that. But I think there are enough people that have done this job before me that, you know, I'm friends with, that, you know, were mentors of mine that I can always lean on. And I certainly have. So I think I've created my own little circle. But yeah, it's not something I'm not going to meet a lot of me's in the world.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of, you know, there's pros and cons with that, right? You're not going to have that natural like safety net of a whole bunch of people that know what you do. But at the same time, it's kind of freeing, and, you know, you can be innovative because you're really, you know, carving your own path because there's not a lot of you out there, you know, so that's kind of really cool. Now you brought up mentors. So who would be the people that you would say have been the biggest influences or, you know, had the biggest impact on you, whether it's growing up or, you know, where you are professionally, like people that, you know, really made a difference to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is probably such a cliche answer, but it's very truthful. I would say my parents, just because they have been there every step of the way for me. They've given me opportunities to fail without knowing it wasn't the end all for me. I've been able to take risks because I knew that I could always go home to mom and dad. I was very fortunate in that sense. And also in everything that I do, I try to make them proud, which makes me try to always do my best. But as far as professional mentors, you know, I think I have so many different mentors depending on where I am in my life. Again, there've been a few that have worked here before me. You know, Will Beekman was the executive director here, and he had hired me in 2016. I mean, he's a huge, huge part of where I am today. Lauren Plesky McLean was also in this position and was another person that, you know, personally and professionally, I wouldn't be where I am without her. She's been awesome. And then again, like I said, as seasons changed, you know, with everything that I've been dealing with since I took over as executive director, Brent Berger has just been just my biggest cheerleader in the corner and just the best resource for me when it came to, he's an engineer, so he knows everything about this building, but then, you know, he also runs his own company. So, you know, we could be sitting here talking about this huge obstacle I have in regards to the building, but then I could also kind of bounce some personnel issues off of him. And, you know, I think those kind of people that make you feel like they understand where you are, but also make you feel good about the decisions you're making. I mean, there's just, I don't even know if mentor is the right word, but I've had some really incredible people that have always helped me along to get me to where I am today. And that's the best gift, I think.
Well, yeah, having that network of support, is very important, and it's almost like you said, it kind of changes based on the need you have and where you're at the time. So you have that ever evolving kind of support
Yeah.
it helps you along the way, because so many of the things that happen now in 2024 are so different than even 5 years ago. Definitely, before COVID, every business is different. Every interaction, between, the people who are working versus the people who are, whether it's, dealing with the services provided or the products that are manufactured, or just the daily interaction. If you're in a school or something, it's completely different. And, that word school, you talked about that briefly previously, but what are the types of connections or programming or anything that you guys do with the schools or with the young people in the area?
Yeah. So as a fundraiser, this program that I'm going to talk about is actually the reason that I wanted to come and work at the FM Kirby Center. It's called the Locks Young People's Theater Series. And so it's 5 stage shows throughout the school year. They're usually around like 10 or 11 a.m. and they're completely free of charge. So the school districts will bus the kids here. They sit for the hour and watch the show, which is an educational and entertaining show. All you hear is either a pin drop if the kids are really paying attention, or just laughing their heads off if it's a funny performance. They're so engaged and they are so focused and so entertained. And then when they go back to the classroom, there's a study guide that is provided by us that goes along with the show that they saw, so that they can incorporate that into their curriculum. And so, like I said, we do 5 of those shows a year. They're usually at max capacity with a waiting list. We've announced our 5 shows for this upcoming year, and it's just an awesome program. You see these, and they're targeted towards different age grades. So like, we'll let them know this is more like kindergarten to 3rd grade, where this one may be geared towards a high school age. And the schools all take advantage of it. We have all the local schools in the area that attend, and it's just an awesome program, but it is 100% underwritten by the Kirby Center. So that's where, our fundraising efforts really kick in, and our Kirby members and our donors are all backing that program.
That's awesome. And how many years, how long have they been doing that?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say 20.
Okay.
And I could be like it could be longer than that. I actually just don't know the number off the top of my head, but I would say about 20 years.
So
maybe.
It's established. It's been there, and district, like you said, with the waiting list and whatnot, districts know what's happening.
It was established, and it was $8 a ticket, and it used to do really well. But, you being in education can probably speak to this better than I can. But, what we saw here as an organization, in 2013, 14, 15 was, as arts and education were being cut from a lot of these school districts, the schools they couldn't get their kids here. They couldn't afford the ticket, on top of then having to do all the logistics with the buses. So we went from a full house with these shows to maybe 200 or 300 kids. So we actually had a donor step up and say, hey, look, we need to bring this program back. We need these kids. They cannot miss out on this. If not us, then who? And they generously and anonymously paid for the entire program that year to test it out, to see, hey, let's see if we can help these schools out and, not charge them. Let's see what it does, and right back up to a full house. So ever since then, that is what we do, is we get local foundations and members and local donors to help us underwrite this program.
Well, and that's awesome, because one of the things, I have been in education for over 3 decades, and I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but one thing I do know for sure is in the school communities up and down, Luzerne, Lackawanna County, the haves and the have-nots are getting further and further apart. I mean, there's so many people that need so many things. I mean, there's kids that come to the schools that have everything. They have a stable environment at home. They have all the resources. They don't have to worry about where their meals are coming from. And then there's so many other young people that don't have most of that. And I think every school district up and down, the Northeast corridor has that. So, I mean, you might not realize it, but when you do things like that, that might be the first time some of those students have been in a building like that to see a performance, get that kind of cultural awareness of what's going on. And so those little things, and you never know what kind of spark you're going to ignite. And that person might want to do that, or, write a play, or get involved in the, the front of house, or, what it takes to produce, or, work the lights in the theater, anything. But those opportunities are really priceless. So, that to me, that's probably the coolest thing you've said so far. Like this, the giving back to the communities, especially the school age kids. That's wonderful.
Yeah. No, it is by far the thing that makes us all smile the most. And actually, Hazleton School District last year, one of the teachers, their entire classroom made us individual, beautiful, handmade thank you cards. And when I tell you, I would say half of our staff, men included, had tears in their eyes when they looked at these. And it was like, this is why we do what we do. We love it. Every staff member loves to go downstairs and watch these kids run in the building, because it, like you said, they're walking through, and just as an adult, when you walk in and you see the beauty, these kids are walking in and they're just so blown away. It's almost kind of like a Disney face, like, yeah. Wow, how beautiful. So it definitely makes us the happiest. And then, we'll have some shows sometimes where if it's a show that we're presenting on our own and we have the opportunity to give some tickets away like a day before because it didn't sell out, we'll go to our local YMCA, we'll go to some local nonprofits, and we'll say, hey, do you have some families? We have like about 100 tickets we can give out. And again, you see those kids come running through, and it's definitely the best part of what we do here.
Now, when you talked about, leading in a time of crisis, of going through something that was really difficult, what would you say, aside from that? So take the flooding out. What would you say is another challenge that comes with being the executive director of the Kirby Center? Like what are some of the things, whether it's, just trying to have a strategic plan on where you're going to take the organization in the future, or like day-to-day things that are always on your plate? What are some of the challenges that you deal with, regularly?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to realizing them this year, just because this past year was really consumed by the flood, and figuring out my time management. Again, I'm a fundraiser by trade. And again, we just did such a wonderful job last year of getting our message out and raising the needed funds for this next season. But, I miss doing my day-to-day fundraising work, and I really haven't had the time to focus on that with the fundraising team we have here in place. So that's one of my goals for this year, because I did struggle with my time management last year of just running from meeting to meeting, because even though we had all of that flood stuff going on, I still wanted to meet with everybody individually. So I would say probably even taking the flood out of the picture, I think time management is a struggle, because each person just does so much here that I could spend 2 or 3 hours a day with each person working on whatever, kind of planning out the future with them. But then it's like, oh, okay, well, then I need to go and have a meeting with this person because we can't execute that without them. Right. So it's like, sometimes I want to do more than I can at the moment. So I think it's also just realizing some limitations and realizing that I'm not going anywhere. So I've got a few years, I've got a lot of time to add some new flair and to, offer even more programs into our community. I don't have to do it all at once. So I think that is a little bit of a challenge for me, because I get so excited and I want to do everything really fast with this awesome team we have. So I think it's just also prioritizing, what makes the most sense for this season. And like you said, kind of coming up with that 5-year strategic plan of, okay, we'll roll this out in maybe 2026, even though we want to do it this season.
Well, then what would be to be more positive? What would be something that is, like really cool about your job on a daily basis? I know we talked about, the program with, bringing the students in, things like that. But like when you go to work every day and deal with stuff, what's one of the really cool things you get to do that other people who don't do what you do wouldn't have that opportunity to do?
Well, on a normal day for us could be a show day. So, just all the hustle and bustle that's going on downstairs. So, where our offices are right above the marquee of the Kirby Center. So just walking downstairs and inside the theater, you have all of the music crews like setting up all the speakers. So, to hear everything for the night, and you'll hear them warming up if it's music, or, rehearsing if it's a dance show or something. Going down.
So you walk through do you go to pretty much every production, every event that's there?
The majority.
And so
there are definitely some that I miss.
I see, now this is just me being goofy, but I see it like you walk in, through the side door and you do that whole like Henry Hill in Goodfellas, where he walks in and goes through the kitchen and goes through and walks through and says hi to everybody and then goes down in front. And he has the front row seat when Henny Youngman comes out. I mean, so you get to interact with everything that goes on. So you're in show business, you know what I mean, for lack of a better term. So you really, oversee everything that happens. You interact with all the nuts and bolts and all the moving parts of everything that goes on there. So, I mean, that's really, you probably don't see, because you're so close to it, you don't see like all the things that you get to do that none of us who are in that, in that field would ever imagine. Like if one person shadowed you for a day, they'd probably be blown away with, oh my God, and then you're probably like, well, yeah, I get it, but I have to make sure this gets done. And so it's kind of, I'm looking at laughing like, oh my God, I can't believe the people that you interact with and the people in your Rolodex who you could probably talk to is probably, mind blowing.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, I actually never take it for granted. Mm-hmm. So I think I would, if I were to have someone shadow me and they'd say, oh my God, that's so cool, I'd be like, I know, this is like, it would make me nervous, right? Like there'll be some stars here sometimes where, our operations team are back there with them all day long and they're like, go back, say hi. And I'm like, I just don't want to bother them. I don't want to. So sometimes I actually choose to just let them do their.
But you could walk in and if you were a person who had this huge, you'd be like, well, excuse me, do you know who I am? I'm the executive director of this place. I mean, like you could really like big time everybody. And honestly, no one would blame you. Like, but knowing your family, knowing how you were brought up and stuff like that, that's not the kind of person you are. But I'm just thinking about like some people would just kind of like force their way in, and bother people and stuff that, just to be funny about it. But I mean, it's really.
I'm going to try to do that a little bit more this year. Because again, this is only going to be my third season. So maybe I'm getting a little bit more comfortable now.
But
there are definitely some acts that I love. Like Kevin James was one of the first comedians here after I had taken over. And oh man, all I wanted to do was meet him. But again, you don't want to be a bother. You don't want them to frown upon the Kirby Center because the executive director is running down to get her picture taken with them. But I thought, you know what? It's worth it for Kevin James. And man, he was such a nice guy, such a nice guy. So that was a highlight for me.
Well, and I think hopefully, people listening to this understand that for anybody who goes there and, sees a show or whatever performance or anything that they're involved in, to realize how much, the fundraising and the membership drive and what is so important, because without all that on the backside, none of those shows happen, right? None of those events get put on, and that's one of the things that, we'll throw out there is like, if somebody's listening to this and they're not a member or they're not, they haven't been, what are ways that just like, what's the website or what are ways that they can contribute or get involved in helping put on shows?
Yeah, so go to our website. It's kirbycenter.org, O-R-G, and you'll find everything there. You'll find every event that we've announced so far. You'll find out our membership. So our membership it's where we get our donations. It's where our fundraising campaigns live. But what people get, there's so many benefits to the membership that for one full year after you purchase, you're entitled to purchase 2 pre-sale tickets to every one of our events. So when our shows announce, well, I shouldn't say every single one. Sometimes there'll be 1 or 2 sticklers, but typically when we announce a show, we'll announce it on a Monday or Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday is only open sales for our members. And they call the box office, and the box office help our box office, it's so rare for us to have one. So you really have that customer service, that person helping you on the other end to where you want to sit. They process your tickets for you, and then it goes on public sale on Friday. So definitely become a member. And And the other great thing, Vito, that these members help us do is we have this other program called a signature series where it's more like we're doing a National Geographic Live Earth After Dark this year. So like they're educational, there's family ones. We're doing this acrobat performance. Those tickets are only $25, but we're spending a really good chunk of money on those shows. So we're underwriting them as well. Like we're always going to put those shows on and expect to lose money. But those are the types of shows that we bring the arts to the community, but this is our way to say to the community, hey, this is super affordable. Come and see this show, bring your family of four, be able to have a good night. So all of those membership dollars goes towards programs like that. And then we have great sponsorships too. So,
well, one of the programs, at one time I went to, I think Leadership Wilkes-Barre, it might have been called at the time. It wasn't even Leadership Northeast. So one group there did a fundraiser for the community project they were doing, and they had the Godfather there, and all their little group dressed in gangster stuff and whatnot. To see the Godfather on the big screen in there was really cool. My wife and I have gone to see some of the, like when Harry Met Sally was there and some other older movies, but to see a classic film in that theater, in a classic theater, for a reasonable price. And, again, like you're going back in time a little bit to what it was like to go to the movies, back in the day. That's cool. And to have that venue here, in Northeast PA, where there's restaurants and there's other things to do in and around downtown Wilkes-Barre. It's like you said before at the leadoff, it's a gem. I mean, it's something that not every community has. We do. And, and it's something that keeps thriving. So, the community must really like what's going on. So it's sometimes you take for granted that we have a Kirby Center, we have an arena, and we have a place where you can go see AAA baseball, and you can see hockey, and you can go skiing. There's so many things right here. And, I think what we all need to do is take advantage of them, right? And make sure that old narrative of there's nothing to do in Northeastern Pennsylvania kind of goes away, because it might have been true at one time, but I don't really think it's true today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are always here. And, this summer being dark is so tough for us. And, those classic movies that you had mentioned, we do those during the summer. We do them all year as well, but we're missing them this summer. It's a nice, cool place for people to come during the day and in the evening to see these movies. We always do the Curtis Montz film series as well, which is like our forum film series. And I know a lot of our donors are missing that this summer, but we will be back with those. It's a beautiful place to see a movie.
So you'll be back to everything being situation normal in September. Is that what you're saying? Is that the promise you're throwing out?
That is my hope. Okay. But yes, September 18th. I mean, again, they're contractors, right? I mean, human error can happen. A carpet might not come in. You just never know. But the plan with all of them is September 18th is our first show. And that is we'll have the basement back open. We'll have the restrooms that are available again. I mean, we have 1,832 seats here. So when our downstairs was unavailable last year, we lost a whole set of men's and women's bathrooms, which sounds kind of silly, but man, that's a big deal when you're in a big entertainment venue like that, because there was just the one set upstairs. So the community was really patient and really understanding, but I think this season is just going to run so much smoother. And we've actually done some other surprise renovations that we're really excited, especially to showcase to our members, because before the flood, we had put together a member survey, sending it out to our members saying, hey, you've supported us all these years. What do you love most about the Kirby? What is frustrating? What would you like to see us do better? And we've taken some of their suggestions and we've added a few fun amenities that I'm excited to show off in the fall.
Excellent. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you had, I think this was a unique conversation, because I haven't really talked to anyone who does what you do. But like you told us, there's not a lot of people that do what you do. So I think, for those listening to this, they got a real, crash course on what it takes to, be an executive director in a nonprofit, but specifically something like the Kirby Center and all the ins and outs that go on with promoting shows and making sure that if a flood happens, that what you do, things like that. So I think, you've been doing a great job. You haven't been there, at the helm steering the ship for all too long, but you've persevered through some actual adversity that most people don't have to deal with. So, we wish you continued success. It's an opportunity, for this community to take advantage of a great resource. It's a fact that, that you guys take so much pride in giving back to the community and building those bonds between the school age kids, but even, the people who are 102 years old take advantage of what goes on there. So it's really a cultural gem. And I'd like to say, thank you for all you do. And we look forward to all these new things happening and where you're going to take the Kirby Center in the future. So thank you for giving some time to us. We'd like to invite you to come back, down the road, and so we could find out what the opening was like and all the new programs are going to be happening there in the future. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll put you on the short list to come back in the future. Is that good with you?
Oh, I'd love that. And thank you. Thanks for putting us on this podcast. I'll talk Kirby any day. So we appreciate you thinking of us.
No, absolutely. So thank you again. That was the executive director of the Kirby Center, Joelle Yarmel, who is born and raised here and born and raised in Northeast PA, and is really in a unique situation to realize some really cool things for the people in this community. So thanks again.